Day one of the collapse. I can still smell the burning. Flesh, rubber, smoke. It clings to my riot gear like a curse, thick in the gas mask, fouling the filters. I haven't taken it off since morning. I'm afraid if I do, I'll finally smell the truth, that the world has gone to hell and it stinks like it always promised it would. They called us conscripts, but we were cannon fodder. Protesters, lowlifes, repeat offenders, anyone the state didn't want on the streets anymore. They herded us like cattle into trucks marked National Recovery Force. They didn't even try to hide it. They gave me a rifle with no magazine and told me to march towards screams. No briefing, no maps, no leadership, just an officer barking orders from a megaphone while perched safely behind an armoured truck. I still hear his voice. I still see his guts trailing from his hips when they pulled him down from the roof an hour later. Poetic justice. He screamed like a pig. I saw 10 men die before I fired a single shot. One conscript, maybe 19, tried to run. They shot him in the back, a warning to the rest of us. We obeyed after that. I obeyed. And the second I stepped past the barbed wire perimeter of Barangay-style Elvira, the growls started. I'll never forget the sound of the first kill. Private Santos, skinny kid, shaking like a leaf in armour too big for him, was trying to fix the bayonet on his M16. The thing leapt from the shadows of a looted sari-sari store. I thought it was a man, a junkie maybe, but the way it moved, no hesitation, no fear, no words, it slammed into him with its teeth first. Tore half his cheek off. Santos shrieked. The others hesitated. Then came the blood, gushing, arterial, spraying the inside of his helmet like red mist. I hit it with my shield, hard. The bones cracked like bamboo. It didn't scream. It didn't even notice. It just kept tearing. The second kill was messier. 2 conscripts tried to save Santos. They shouldn't have. The thing latched onto one's neck and twisted like it was unscrewing a bottle cap. Head half hanging by skin, the man twitched on the ground while the other vomited into his gas mask. He died blind. That was when I knew this wasn't a riot. This wasn't a pandemic. This was something old, primeval, predatory. The zombies, we can call them that now, can't we? They didn't just bite, they devoured. They wanted to consume everything, skin, flesh, bone. One of them got tangled in razor wire and kept clawing at the air while its entrails unravelled behind it like a tail. It didn't stop, even after its guts were completely out, even after it had no legs. I tried to save one man. I pulled him into a shell of a house with no roof, using my riot shield to bat away 2 of them. They followed, dragging their broken feet over broken tile. I stabbed one in the temple with my hunting knife. It moaned but didn't fall. I stabbed again, 4 times, 5. On the 6th it dropped. The second one pinned me. I used my gas mask's filter as a bludgeon and cracked its nose inward. That did nothing. I bit its ear. That worked better. It recoiled just long enough to jam the knife into the soft part under its chin. I pushed until the hilt sank in and my hand was sticky with gore. It stopped moving. I didn't even ask the man's name. He had no leg. It was gone below the knee. I bandaged it. He was silent, just breathing, eyes wide. I told him I'd carry him if I had to. But when I turned my back, he took my spare sidearm and shot himself in the mouth. The echo was louder than the growls outside. When I got back to the perimeter, I was alone. Of the 50 conscripts sent in, maybe 7 stumbled out, covered in blood, missing weapons, screaming or stunned. One man tore his helmet off and clawed at his scalp until he bled. They eat your thoughts, he kept saying. They eat your thoughts. The commanding officer was gone. Dead, likely. The trucks didn't wait. They drove off. We were left behind. I scavenged what I could. Ammunition, a fresh filter for my mask, painkillers. Someone's radio. It only plays static now. I don't know if I'll make it through the night. But I know this. Whatever this is, it's spreading fast. The military isn't containing it. They're feeding it. I'm not a soldier. I'm not a hero. But I'm not dying for someone else's lie. Not today. Julian the Rebel Ray, end of entry. Day 1. Day 2 of the collapse. We buried the last conscript under a slab of busted concrete behind a burned-out car wash. Didn't even know his name. Only that he cried when I wrapped his arm in gauze and tried to calm him down. Kept repeating mama mama like a rosary. Maybe he was 17, maybe 19. It doesn't matter now. He bled out before the sun touched the roofs. By morning, we were down to 3. Me, a guy named Carlos Agbayani, and a twitchy kid from La Union, who we never saw again after he went out for water. No gunfire, no scream, just gone. Carlos didn't look like a fighter at first, skinny, buzz-cut, twitchy eyes, but when the infected charged through the fence around noon, he moved with purpose, brought one down with a sharpened entrenching tool and bashed its skull in so hard the steel folded in on itself. After that, we didn't speak for 10 minutes, just sat against the wall, breathing through our gas masks, our boots soaked in something too dark to be mud. When we finally spoke, it was over cigarettes we looted from a dead private's rucksack. "You're that protester, right?" Carlos said. "The one from the vlogs?" I nodded. Took off my helmet and wiped the sweat from my brow. The sky was hazy and the sun had turned the air sour. You could smell rot in every direction. "I watched your vids," he said. "The one where you got pepper sprayed at Lunita. Brave, man. Real brave." "Wasn't brave," I told him. "I was angry." He chuckled. "Aren't we all?" That's when I decided I'd keep him alive. Not because he was useful, not because I owed him anything, but because it had been less than 48 hours since the world ended, and already everything was silence, flies, and the sound of chewing behind cracked windows. I needed something to hold on to. We decided to leave the city that night. Word on the last working military radio said a checkpoint was forming in San Jose del Monte, some evac route for non-critical survivors. Whatever that meant. We made it 6 blocks before we saw what they meant by checkpoint. Bodies, civilians, men, women, kids, all shot in the back as they tried to flee past a barricade of stacked vehicles and sandbags. Some had military dog tags placed on them. Others had notes scrawled on cardboard. Bitten, refused order, coward. Carlos puked inside his mask. I helped him clean it out. No shame left in this world. We didn't talk for the next hour. The air was getting thicker, more infected now. No herds, but lone stragglers in alleyways, crawling under broken fences, bleeding from the eyes, fingernails stripped down to meat. They moved without purpose, like broken machines. The worst was a woman dragging a baby stroller. There was nothing in the stroller, just blood. Her neck had been torn open, and still she pushed that empty cart down the street like a routine she refused to break. We avoided her. That night, Carlos broke the silence again. "I was in the reserves before this," he said. "Quit last year. Said I couldn't stomach orders anymore. My mom didn't forgive me." "You think she made it out?" Carlos just looked at the floor. I didn't press. We broke into a hardware store and barricaded ourselves in the stockroom. Nailed shut the doors with crowbars and zip ties. We ate instant noodles cold, crouched in silence, listening to the groans just outside. We could hear them scratching at the glass. One of them stood in the parking lot, smashing its head into a steel post again and again until the sound changed, wet instead of solid. "I think they're stuck," Carlos whispered, "in their last thoughts." "Or maybe they're empty," I said. We took turns sleeping. I dreamed about fire. Carlos said he didn't sleep at all, just watched the blinking green light on the emergency exit sign and pretended it was the moon. "We're heading south tomorrow. They say there's a ferry still operating near Batangas. I don't know if it's true. I don't care. But I've made up my mind. I'm not dying in this city, not in someone else's war, not in someone else's grave. And if I get the chance, I'll burn down the whole rotten machine that let this happen." End of entry. Day 4 of the collapse. We made it to the checkpoint near Batangas. What was left of it? The military had broadcast coordinates over shortwave 2 nights ago. Priority safe zone, medical personnel, supplies, naval escort sounded too good to be true. It was. We followed a line of desperate, half-starved survivors through the forest, skirting patrols and roving infected. One night, Carlos saved my life when I slipped on a ravine slope. He caught my wrist as I slid toward a dry riverbed full of corpses. I said thanks. He just grunted and said, "Don't mention it, rebel." We reached the edge of the safe zone perimeter at dawn. Smoke stained the sky like an oil painting. A field hospital had burned down. You could still smell gauze and fuel. The bodies were fresh. Civilians, soldiers. No bite marks, just gunshots. Carlos crouched beside a little girl with no shoes, her hands still clutching a lanyard ID. "Evac, pass green level." Shot through the chest. Probably tried to get out. "They killed them," he whispered. "They killed them all." I checked the tents, blood trails, bullet holes, drag marks, scorch marks on the earth where people had been burned alive. There were no groans, no screams, just wind, just the humming of flies. And then we found her. A nurse, curled under a flipped-over ambulance, pale, covered in dried blood, alive. Name tag read, Ariana C. Velasco RN. She pulled a surgical blade on us when we got close, hands trembling. I'm not infected, she said in a hoarse voice. I swear to God. We dropped our weapons and raised our hands. I'm Julian. This is Carlos. We're not military. She lowered the blade. They ordered everyone into formation, she said. Said we were moving out. Then the shooting started. Zombies? Not at first. She had been hiding for 2 nights. Had seen a squad of soldiers try to escape with civilians. They got mowed down. Command had gone rogue. Panic, maybe. Maybe orders from higher up. She lost her best friend, her fiancé, and the medics she'd served with. She watched a mother crawl on fire toward her baby and die 3 inches away. I don't know why I'm still alive, she said. Carlos handed her water. I gave her the only protein bar we had left. She cried when she chewed it, said it tasted like plastic and tears. We laughed. God help us, we laughed. That night, we slept inside the ambulance, took turns on watch. Ariana had a pocket journal. She drew her fiancé's face from memory before she fell asleep. Carlos and I sat on the roof, under the stars, rifles resting on our knees. I think she's stronger than us, he said. I think she's broken, I said. So are we. The next morning, Ariana told us about her brother who'd been trying to escape the country through the docks. You can pay your way onto fishing vessels, she said, if you know the right people. Passports, I asked. She nodded. Still have mine. Buried it in the med tent floor when the soldiers started searching bags. Carlos and I looked at each other. I still had mine. He had forged his. Then we moved tonight, I said. She smiled. Just a flicker. Something had changed in us. It wasn't just survival anymore. Now we had something to live for, something to escape to. End of entry. Day 4 of the collapse. The docks were a war zone. We made it to Batangas early, just as the sun started to rise. The military had set up a perimeter, but it was a half-hearted one. The kind you throw together when you don't care anymore, when all you're guarding is the illusion of order. From a distance, it looked like any other naval base. A few decrepit cargo ships and fishing trawlers, all waiting to be taken out into the ocean. We had no idea what we'd find. All we had were Ariana's whispered instructions and the hope that some semblance of humanity still existed out there. The first sign that we were in deeper shit than we realized was when we saw the barbed wire fences on the way in, every one of them lined with bodies. Civilians who'd tried to make it, left to rot in the sun, their faces pale and hollow. A sign above them read, "Stay behind the line. Do not attempt to cross." There was a military patrol walking the perimeter, just 1 or 2 men, guns slung over their shoulders like they'd given up. And then we saw it. A truck, packed with bodies, driving past. The windows were sealed tight, covered in a thin film of blood. The soldiers inside were laughing. I could hear it, even over the roar of the engine. One of them raised his rifle as the truck rolled past, aimed it at the pile of bodies, and pulled the trigger. A single shot. The body at the top of the pile jerked violently, its head exploding like a watermelon under the heat of a sledgehammer. Carlos grabbed my arm. I didn't know what to say, so I didn't say anything. Ariana's eyes were wide. I could see her grip tightening around the journal she carried, her breathing shallow. She looked like she was going to be sick. We kept moving. We approached the main entrance, sticking close to the walls, using the chaos to hide in the shadows. We had no weapons, except for the hunting knife I'd tucked into my boot and the faint hope that our faces wouldn't betray us. It was a long shot, but it was all we had. Ariana led the way, her hand brushing against the railing as she whispered, "We need to get to the trawlers. They'll take us out. They'll take us out tonight. No questions asked." "How much do you trust them?" I asked, keeping my voice low. "Enough," she said, though her eyes didn't meet mine. As we reached the edge of the docks, the first trawler came into view, a rusted hulk moored at the far end. It looked like it hadn't moved in years, and the people standing by the dock, survivors like us, looked just as desperate. Some were sick, some were old, some were barely alive. The crew on board didn't seem to care. They were just another part of the system, trading lives for passage. I was about to ask Ariana how we were going to get on board when the ground suddenly shook. It wasn't the rumble of an engine, it wasn't the crashing of waves, it was something heavier, something with more weight to it. I saw the soldiers first. A line of trucks rolled in, all painted black with government insignia. A dozen men in riot gear spilled out, their guns ready. And then I saw the civilians being herded out of the trucks like cattle. They weren't running, they weren't fighting, they just followed orders, their hands bound, their faces blank. There were no screams, no protests, just the dull shuffle of feet across the pavement. Carlos stepped back, his hand covering his mouth. "Shit," he muttered. "This is what they've been doing." "They're using them as bait," Ariana said, her voice trembling. "They're taking the infected to the docks. They're using the survivors as live bait to lure them to the ships. And then..." A gunshot split the air, followed by screams. A soldier with a rifle aimed at one of the survivors, a man in his 50s, and fired. The man fell, but didn't die. He tried to get back up, dragging himself across the concrete, but another soldier shot him in the head. Then another. The others followed. It was a massacre, just like the ones we'd seen before. The soldiers didn't care if the civilians were infected or not. To them, they were just bodies. Disposable. Carlos clenched his fists. I could see his teeth grinding in his mask. He didn't speak. There was nothing left to say, nothing left to do. Then one of the soldiers noticed us. "Hey!" he yelled, raising his rifle. "What the hell are you doing?" We froze. I reached for the knife hidden in my boot, but Carlos grabbed my wrist. "Run," he hissed. And so we ran. We didn't look back. Ariana led us through the maze of cargo containers and scaffolding. We could hear them yelling behind us, more soldiers coming to chase us down. I didn't stop to look. I didn't care. We had to get to the boat. We had to escape before they rounded us up. We reached the trawler just as a squad of soldiers began to close in on us. The crew was waiting at the gangplank. They were ready to leave. Their eyes were bloodshot and hollow, but they were still human. They saw us coming and they didn't hesitate. The captain nodded and the gangplank dropped. "We don't have much time," he said. "Get on board, now." We ran. We barely made it across the deck before the soldiers opened fire. I felt a bullet graze my arm as I jumped onto the boat. Carlos and Ariana were already inside. The engine roared to life. As the trawler pulled away from the docks, I glanced back at the shore. The soldiers were still there, still firing. The screams of the survivors, the sound of gunshots, all of it faded into the distance. But I knew one thing. This was only the beginning. End of entry. Day 6. Day 10 of the collapse. The sea is a liar. It promised freedom. It promised escape. But all it has given us is distance from the world we left behind. I can still hear the echoes of those gunshots on the docks. The screams of the survivors, begging for mercy, dying without a chance to fight back. Every time I close my eyes, I see the blood pooling in the streets, staining the pavement like an unforgiving tide. But at least we're alive. At least we're still here. The trawler is slow, barely moving. The engine sputters like it's about to die with every rotation, but we keep going. There's no turning back. The sea doesn't care. It just moves, indifferent to everything, to us, to the world we've lost. Ariana has been silent for most of the journey. She doesn't sleep much. I can tell she's struggling. Her eyes are always distant, like she's trying to forget something. I don't ask about it. I don't need to know. She has a past that's darker than mine, darker than Carlos's. I think we all do now. Carlos, on the other hand, doesn't shut up. He's pacing the deck at all hours, looking for something that isn't there. He's always on edge, always watching the horizon like it's hiding something. I get it, I do. We've all seen too much, but he's different about it. I've never seen him so restless. He keeps talking about how the world's falling apart, about how it's not just the zombies we need to worry about anymore. He says we're all just waiting for the other shoe to drop. And I know he's right, but there's something about his tone that I can't ignore. Like he's waiting for something worse than what we've already seen. As we get closer to the southern islands, the crew starts talking about refugees, mostly Chinese and Vietnamese survivors. Some of them on boats, others just drifting. They speak in hushed tones, like they don't want to be heard, as if saying it aloud would make it more real. They tell stories about people being captured by pirates, or worse, other survivors who've turned into something else. These stories, they're not new. They're the same ones we've heard before. There's nothing we can do about it. All we can do is keep our heads down, hope the sea doesn't swallow us whole, and try to get to Thailand. That's all we've got. Ariana's eyes have lost their edge since we left the Philippines. She still has that faraway look, but it's softer now, less frantic. She spends most of her time below deck, looking at her journal or trying to stitch up the worst of our wounds. Nothing major, just a few cuts from rough landings and bad luck. She tells me she's never been on a boat before. I laugh at her. How would she know the sea's a liar if she's never seen it? She smiles back at me, but there's no real humour in her eyes. I don't know if I'm ready for another fight, she says one night when we're alone by the stern. What happens if they come after us? I turn to look at her, and for a second I can't find the words because I'm not ready for it either. But I know what I'm supposed to say. We survive. We fight. I shrug. That's what we do now. But she doesn't look convinced. We hit a storm 2 days out. It came out of nowhere, a monstrous thing, a black cloud that swallowed the sun and threw us into chaos. The boat creaked and groaned like it was going to turn to look at her, and for a second I can't find the words, because I'm not ready for it either. But I know what I'm supposed to say. We survive, we fight, I shrug. That's what we do now. But she doesn't look convinced. We hit a storm 2 days out. It came out of nowhere, a monstrous thing, a black cloud that swallowed the sun and threw us into chaos. The boat creaked and groaned like it was going to snap. Day 15 of the collapse. We didn't cheer when we saw the Thai shoreline. We just stared, half in disbelief, half in fear. It wasn't victory. It wasn't relief. It was the next stage of a nightmare we hadn't woken up from. The boat wheezed like a dying animal as it scraped against the ruined docks of an old fishing village. Wooden boards snapped under our feet. Paint peeled off the boats moored nearby like shedding skin. It smelled of salt and death, but not like the rotting blood back home. No, this was different. This place hadn't collapsed yet. It was just waiting for its turn. Carlos vomited the moment we landed. He hadn't said a word since the night before, when we saw the safe zone in flames, when we dragged Ariana out of the smoke and corpses. She was still weak, skin clammy, hair matted with soot and dried blood, but alive. She hadn't cried. None of us had. I helped her off the boat while Carlos cleaned himself up with seawater and spit. My legs were trembling, not from exhaustion, I was used to that, but from uncertainty. This new land, this new war, was foreign in every sense. We had no maps, no allies, only passports, soaked documents, and the determination not to die. That first night we camped under the skeleton of a boathouse. I used my riot shield to barricade the entry while Carlos took watch. I cleaned my gear, rewound the bandages on Ariana's arm, sharpened my hunting knife. My bat was still sticky with dried flesh, bits of sinew welded into the dents. I left it as it was. A reminder. We ate uncooked rice and a can of pineapple. It was the first sweet thing we'd tasted in over a week. We didn't talk. Our mouths were full of silence. That's what trauma does. It kills the chatter. Morning came with heat and a distant gunshot. We found them by following smoke trails. Chinese refugees huddled around fire barrels in the ruins of a Thai rest stop. Most were older women and kids. A few men stood guard with makeshift spears and empty rifles. The leaders introduced themselves in broken English and Mandarin. One of them was Mei Lin. She was young, maybe mid-20s. Long black hair tied in a messy bun. Her hands were calloused, and her eyes were sharp, too sharp for someone that young. She carried a kitchen cleaver like it was an extension of her body. Carlos noticed her first. His whole demeanour shifted. The bravado returned. His voice grew louder, and he even laughed. I didn't say anything. We all needed reasons to live. Maybe she was his. The refugees told us what we feared. The Thai government was splintered. Some military units protected roads, others extorted refugees. Camps were only safe if you could pay. Those without bribes became labour or bait. Cannon fodder, one of the old men whispered. They send people to lure the infected away, not soldiers, civilians. The fire crackled between us as I stared into it. The world wasn't just infected, it was infested, with rot, with fear, with greed. I clenched my fists. I'd protested all my life against corruption, against imperialism, against abuse of power. And now? Now I was in a foreign land watching the same demons play with new masks. We left before sundown. Mei Lin and 3 others joined us. Carlos didn't hide his grin. Ariana, still recovering, rode in a cart we fashioned from scrap. I pulled it myself. I didn't trust anyone else. The plan was simple. Head inland toward a rumoured processing checkpoint, use our documents, lie if we had to, claim we were diplomatic refugees, journalists, medics, whatever it took. That night, we made camp by a swamp. Mosquitoes feasted on us like we were the buffet. I stayed up with Maylin on watch. We talked in short bursts about food, about her sister who didn't make it, about what she'd do if she reached the capital. I want a farm, she said. Chickens, a dog, a man who doesn't lie. I didn't laugh, I just nodded. You'll get it. She looked at me for a long time, then looked away. And you? I want to stop running. The night grew colder after that, but I felt warmer. Somehow. Carlos made Ariana smile the next morning with some dumb joke about starting a YouTube channel for surviving the apocalypse. Julian can film, I'll model, Maylin can be the cook. We all laughed for the first time in days. It sounded alien. It felt human. But the next roadblock brought us back to reality. 3 Thai soldiers, young, nervous, drunk on power. They tried to take Maylin. Carlos stepped in first. One of them swung a rifle butt into his ribs. The second raised his weapon at me. I didn't wait. I rushed him, slammed my riot shield into his face, heard the crunch of cartilage and teeth. I swept his legs, then brought the bat down. Once, twice. Skull split open like overripe fruit. Blood soaked the dirt. The other 2 ran. No one said a word. We took their supplies and moved on. I didn't feel guilt, just weight. We reached the capital outskirts 3 days later. But this isn't the end. This is the eye of the storm. Corruption still festers here too. We see it in the checkpoints, in the faces of the survivors. You can smell it, like spoiled meat hidden behind clean uniforms. But now we've got a crew. We've got each other. And we're not just surviving anymore. We're building something. We just don't know what yet. End of entry, day 15. Day 18 of the collapse. We reached the city, but we didn't enter as heroes. We slipped in like rats. Chiang Rai was barely holding together. It hadn't fallen like Manila, but it was teetering. Cracks in every wall, rumours in every corner. You could feel the tension in the air like a wire pulled too tight. The city wore a mask of order. Uniforms at gates. Loudspeakers barking orders in Thai. Banners fluttering with slogans, unity, safety, obedience. But it was all hollow. Just another collapsing tower propped up by fear and barbed wire. We queued like livestock at the checkpoint. Metal fences corralled the desperate. Children cried. Adults stared, eyes sunken, smiles gone. Soldiers paced with fingers twitching on triggers. Every few minutes someone was pulled from the line. Random inspection. Sometimes they came back. Most didn't. Carlos kept Maylin close. Ariana leaned on me. We blended into the crowd. Refugees with forged papers and quiet desperation. I wore my GP5 gas mask half hanging from my neck. A reminder of what I'd survived. My riot gear looked stripped down intentionally. I wanted to look like I'd given up, not fought back. Next, we stepped up. The soldier barely looked at us. He was young, sweating beneath his helmet, eyes red from either insomnia or drugs. He stared at our documents. His lips moved, but no words came out. Then he looked up at me. You military? No, I said calmly. Media, blogger. We filmed evacuations in Manila. He stared longer. Too long. I could see it. He wasn't buying it. Then he smirked. Pay. What? I asked. Payment. For safety. For passport stamp. For not going to quarantine zone. A bribe. Carlos tensed. I saw his hand twitch. Maylin stepped forward, but I held her back. I reached into my pack. Not for money. We had none. But for my med kit. I pulled out a small packet of antibiotics and set it on the desk. He stared at it, lips twitching. Greed is universal. He pocketed the drugs and waved us through. Just like that. But the checkpoint was only the first gate. Inside it was worse. The refugee camp was a walled zone on the edge of the city, an old warehouse district turned prison, hundreds packed into makeshift tents. Disease spread faster than hope. Armed guards stood at every corner, barking orders like gods over insects. They handed out ration cards like dog tags, 1 meal a day, rice and something brown. No real water, just purified runoff. You had to trade for medicine, even soap. People disappeared at night. We learned quick. Keep your head down, don't make noise, don't trust the men in uniform. The soldiers took what they wanted, food, supplies, bodies. Especially from the weak. I caught one trying to drag Ariana away behind a tent. He didn't see the knife until it was in his throat. No screams, just a gurgle and a thud. Carlos helped me bury him behind the latrines. The stench covered the blood. That night, we made a plan. We had to get out. There was no sanctuary here, only waiting rooms for the grave. Maylene spoke to her contacts, refugees from Yunnan, people who had bribed smugglers with heirlooms and teeth. She whispered of a small village southeast, abandoned by authorities but untouched by hordes. Fertile land, clean water, a place to hide, maybe to live. Maybe. It would take days through mountain roads, old refugee trails, and military checkpoints rigged to fail. We needed supplies. Carlos and I broke into a corrupt lieutenant's stash house. While Ariana and Maylin distracted him with fake papers and charm, we raided his food, tools, maps, and fuel. I found a box of old passports, dozens of names, all stamped quarantined. None of them lived. He was using people as currency. I didn't kill him when we left, but I burned his documents, let his victims be free in death, at least. By dawn, we slipped out in the chaos of shift change. No goodbyes, just footprints in the mud and a stolen military truck packed with desperation. We left Chiang Rai behind, but the images stayed with me. Paper-thin lies, rotten authority, people crushed beneath boots behind borders. Every speech I'd ever screamed through a megaphone echoed in my skull, now hollow with irony. And yet, even in that, I found resolve. I won't build another throne. I'll build a home. The system failed, so we'll make our own.
End of entry, day 18.
Day 43 of the collapse. I never thought I'd see green again. Not the neon of nightclubs or the screen glow of protest live streams. Real green, the kind that breathes, the kind that grows. We found the village 2 weeks ago, a pocket of silence tucked into the folds of northern Thailand. No signs of military, no checkpoints, no fences, no smoke trails in the sky, just the rusted skeletons of motorcycles, crumbling roadside shrines, and a wooden sign half eaten by moss. The locals had fled or died months ago. Their homes were empty but not broken. We found rain barrels still intact, fields overgrown but not barren, a well that sang when the wind passed it. It was enough. We didn't speak much that first night, just stared at the stars from a cracked temple roof. Ariana leaned on my shoulder, wrapped in my jacket. Maylin sat beside Carlos, fingers tangled in his. The temple's broken Buddha watched over us, eyes faded but peaceful. That night, for the first time, there were no gunshots in the distance, no moans, no screams, just frogs, wind, a rustling in the mango trees. The silence unnerved me more than the chaos ever did. We started building the next morning. We stripped bamboo and hammered nails scavenged from a collapsed barn. Carlos knew more than I expected. His father had been a carpenter. I learned by copying his hands. Ariana drew out blueprints in the dirt with a stick, laughing when we argued about door placement. Maylin found seeds, tomatoes, chili, long beans. She smiled when the first sprout broke through. We scavenged daily. Bicycles became wheelbarrows, beds became fences, a satellite dish became a chicken coop roof. We buried every corpse we found, wrapped in rice sacks and banana leaves, whispering words they would never hear. I found a solar panel in a dusty shed, rigged it to an old car battery and powered a radio. Nothing but static. But it was our static. We carved new paths. Ariana took to the garden. She named the chili plants after old Filipino movie stars. Nora wilted early, but Vilma thrived. Carlos made a shower from bamboo tubes. He joked it made him feel like royalty. We all laughed, and it felt wrong, like laughter didn't belong in this world anymore. But it did. We made it belong. Some days we sang, quietly, so nothing heard us. Some nights Carlos danced with Ariana, bare feet on dirt, arms loose and swaying to an imagined rhythm. I spent evenings writing this diary. Not as a rebel, not as a vlogger, just as a man. A man trying to remember who he was before the world cracked. One afternoon I caught Maylin staring at me. She said nothing, just smiled and handed me a piece of fruit, peeled, sweet and warm from her hands. We didn't speak about love. It was too fragile, but we felt it. We made a pact, quietly. If the dead ever came, we would not run again. We would fight for this little piece of green. This wasn't a safe zone. It was something better, a start, not a fortress. Not a rebellion, a farm, a home. For now, that's enough. End of entry, day 43. Day 108 of the collapse. I woke up today before the rooster, before Carlos, before the sun. I sat at the edge of the rice field and watched fog drift like smoke over the water. The mountains in the distance looked like sleeping giants. I never thought I'd live to see a morning like this. The war, the real one, has quieted. Not ended, but softened. The last time we saw the infected was 3 weeks ago. A straggler near the creek, jaw hanging like melted rubber. I crushed its skull with the spade I was using to dig yams. I didn't flinch. I didn't even breathe heavy. It's just what we do now. But this day isn't about death. It's about life. Carlos and Ariana dressed up. He shaved with a sharpened razor, wore a blue barong Tagalog he found hanging in the temple. Ariana wore a dress we sewed from scavenged curtains. Somehow, even in this dead world, she made it beautiful. They exchanged vows under the old banyan tree. No priest, just us. Carlos looked her in the eye and said, "Even if this world stays broken, I'll still choose you. Every morning, every firewood run, every scarecrow I fix. I'll choose you," she whispered back, "and I'll be your last light when the nights are dark." I couldn't help but smile. I clapped, I shouted, I cheered. It echoed through the rice fields like gunfire, but it was joy, the loud kind. We had mangoes, dried fish, and boiled eggs for the wedding feast. Ariana insisted we use a leaf as a tablecloth. Carlos carved their initials into the old tree bark, C+A 2020 fire. And later that night, Maylin stood beside me under the moonlight, quiet. Her black hair fell over her shoulders like silk. She held my hand, pulled something from her pocket, 2 rings made from braided copper wire. She didn't speak English well, but she didn't have to. She said, "Julian, marry me?" I blinked. I didn't answer right away. The words got caught behind a lump in my throat. Then I took the ring and slipped it on. "No priest, no altar, no crowd," I said. "Just you and me, I do." She nodded, then kissed me. Not like a firework, not rushed, just real. That night, we slept in each other's arms in our bamboo home with the wind whispering through the thatched roof. I dreamed of children, brown-eyed, laughing, barefoot in the dirt, of planting oranges, of building a school on the hill. I dreamed of peace, no live streams, no marches, no shields, just love, food, and morning fog. That's the rebellion now. Living, loving, growing things. End of entry.